Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, by now, everyone has had an opportunity to review the footage of the shooting death of Renee Good, who was killed by an ICE officer while driving toward him in her car in Minneapolis, Minnesota last week. Now, we've seen footage from different angles and at different speeds. We've seen it from different perspectives. Finally, we've been able to see and hear what happened immediately before and after the shooting. New footage emerged on Friday afternoon, and we've not had the opportunity to address it on Rising yet, so let's watch and react.
Okay, we don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Whoa!
Now, this new footage does clear up some popular misconceptions. It does not appear, for instance, that Good received conflicting instructions from the officers. What it looks and sounds like is that she was following her partner's instructions to flee the scene. That line, "Drive, baby, drive," which was spoken by her wife, is very telling. Now, the new footage does not necessarily answer, however, the only relevant question, which is whether the officer who shot and killed Good, Jonathan Ross, had a reasonable fear for his life. That's the standard. So many in the media are getting this wrong and stating that he shouldn't have fired on Good for trying to flee the scene, which is true. Fleeing the scene on its own is not a satisfactory reason for him to shoot at her. He was entitled to shoot, however, if her vehicle was headed toward him and he thought she was going to mow him down, even if she wasn't planning to do that, and even if getting out of the way was, in hindsight, a better option. So many commentators are becoming emotional about this. It doesn't matter that she said she wasn't mad at him and that he called her a bad name after shooting at her. It doesn't matter whether she was blocking traffic or whether the police were right to detain her in the first place. And it doesn't matter whether Ross was previously dragged by a vehicle, though he was. And in fact, his own political views and hers don't matter at all. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is whether Ross, reasonably fearing for his life, was justified in firing at an oncoming vehicle. Cooler heads, by which I mean experts in the legal system and in law enforcement, they will make that decision by reviewing all the footage. Only a well-trained expert in the use of force can determine, based on what we can see and based on the principles of the presumption of innocence that Officer Ross is afforded, whether he was justified in shooting her. Now, I know everyone on social media, every talking head on cable news, right and left, thinks they're qualified to make that determination. Well, you're not, so calm down. Now, some people hate that issues require nuanced investigation. I know many people on the right want to totally acquit Ross, no questions asked. And I know many people on the left want to bring up charges right now without examining the details. Here was the Bulwark's Tim Miller, casually asserting as fact that Ross murdered Good.
She was like, dude, I'm not mad at you 20 seconds earlier. A 37-year-old lady in a beanie, in a Honda Pilot, with stuffies in the passenger seat. You thought this lady was a crazed murderer? She talked to you. She just talked to you. I will not be gaslit by these people. And I will not calm down the rhetoric and tone it down and be like, oh, you got to understand the other perspective. Jonathan Ross murdered her. She talked to him calmly. Said, dude, I'm not mad.
Okay, I'm sorry, but all of that, again, is beside the point. Someone can talk with you calmly and in a friendly manner and then still try to run you over in their car. That could be the case. It could also be the case that it was totally unnecessary for Ross to respond that way, but justifiable in the moment because the car was coming at him and he had to make a split-second decision. Or it could be the case that the car wasn't coming at him, that a closer examination of the video footage will reveal that the shooting was totally unjustified, and if so, he should be prosecuted. Spouting off on social media that this is case closed either way, that's wrongful and it's unhelpful. And it's inflaming the public. And I understand the anger. Like liberals, I recoil at having mass law enforcement agencies everywhere doing papers, please style policing of Americans. And I think the Trump administration should consider that these showy displays of extreme force are undermining the entire agenda, the popular parts of Trump's policies. American citizens shouldn't die or face routine deprivation of their rights, and it's ghoulish to suggest, as some have, that she deserved it or that she was a domestic terrorist. The efforts to smear her for having been the victim of the shooting, I think that's shameful and it's wrong. Yet I cannot co-sign mob justice. I cannot say, I've seen enough, prosecute this man, without considering that he may well have been justified under current use of force standards. And if you've developed strong opinions either way, based on short video segments on social media, even though we have all been fooled by these things numerous times, I'm begging you to just calm down and wait.
So I thought your radar and just your perspective from the day that it happened has been really balanced.
Oh, thank you.
And I thought it was fair. I do think that I was let down because it felt like within minutes of me trying to learn the story, just to acquire information from leadership, that the Department of Justice, that the federal investigators, that the president, that Kristi Noem, everyone had made up their minds. Mm-hmm. And I know that there were Democrats that were aggressive in their response. We know cursing from the mayor and all the stuff that was happening. Yeah. But I was just so confused about how we had this information without an investigation. And I know that you said a lot of people are on TV pretending to be experts. And so I was trying to rely on, as somebody who tries to bring analysis to television, experts that actually chimed in. So even on Friday, when Amber and I were talking, I read a quote in the New York Times by a guy who works for the University of South Carolina. His name's Jeffrey Alpert, and he's actually an expert, like you referred to, on the use of police force, worked in the industry, in the business. And he told them the way you evaluate this is you look at it, you see what's the imminent threat to life. And from his eyes, he sees there is none. She's leaving. And that's one expert. But then you have a variety of other people that have worked closely in this type of a position before, that have been on a variety of, I'm talking about real world experience, saying like, oh, we would be trained in this situation to distance and cover, meaning step back, move away, let the person go on, get them later, arrest afterwards, not shoot right away. So all of us are not federal investigators, all of us are not experts here, but I think the fact that we're now excusing local officials from being part of this investigation, now that the tensions are already inflamed on both sides of no matter what your perspective is, we're creating suspicion that leads to larger chaos, and local officials feel like they are completely unattached from this investigation. And so how can we expect fairness and transparency when it seems that Trump and his administration, the same people doing the investigation, have already made up their mind? And I think that to me is the biggest part that's bothering everyone, because you're right. None of us understand exactly what should happen next.
Right. There's too much making up your mind in both directions, I would say. Right. They can't shoot her, as I've said, just for fleeing the scene. They're not supposed to do that. That makes sense, because if you shoot wildly at someone fleeing, you could hit someone else. You could.
And I looked at you weren't here the next day. 100% correct. You can't shoot the tire.
Yeah.
You can't shoot the leg.
They don't do any of that.
You can't shoot the ground.
So it just matters if she was coming right at him and he thought in the moment he couldn't get out of the way in time, and that's what he had to do. And I can't tell from the video footage if that's the case or not. I don't believe anyone really can. So we'll need a sober-minded investigation of experts who look at that very closely and figure out whether his determination that he made to shoot instead of try to get out of the way was justified in the moment. And we can't tell. People are like, oh, he's clearly in front of the vehicle. Oh, he's clearly to the side. Oh, it's actually can't tell. And we get misled by video all the time. So let's just wait and see what comes of it.
Robby, what's on your radar?
It's a trap. What's a trap, you ask? Well, the Justice Department moving against Jerome Powell, I'm forced to conclude. He is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. President Trump has had it out for Powell for some time now, given that the Fed has failed to lower interest rates, something Trump believes would be good for the economy and good for the short-term to mid-term prospects of the Republican Party. Now, Trump's DOJ is investigating Powell over statements that he made about the Fed building renovations, which are indeed hideously over budget. It's disgusting. But everything, absolutely everything the government does, that runs over budget. It's like Lisa Murkowski said in her statement. She was right. She pointed out that if exceeding the cost of a project is grounds for investigation, well, then the department itself should be investigated. Yeah, she's right. So Trump going after Powell, it does feel like a pretext, and it's really about their broader conflict, not about this one construction project, unfortunately, exceeding its price tag. Moreover, CNN's Harry Enton ran the numbers, and keeping the Fed independent of the president is very popular with the American people. Let's watch.
They think it's incredibly important that the Fed acts independently of Donald Trump, and they think it's best for the economy. We're talking about more than 2/3 of adults, 68%, 91% of Democrats, 75% of independents, and even 41%, 2/5 of Trump's base thinks it's important that the Fed acts independently of Trump for the best of the economy. So when you get 41% of Republicans and 91% of Democrats agreeing on something with 75% of independents, you know it is a popular position.
Well, that is bad news for Trump if he insists on going down this path. Moreover, manipulating interest rates is not a good idea. Look, I'd sooner abolish the Fed entirely than make it subservient to the executive branch. That would create all sorts of terrible incentives. We'd have a monetary policy serving the short-term interests of politicians. We just can't have that. Now, if Trump really wants to get the economy going, well, he should move away from many of the protectionist policies that he's chosen to implement, like the tariffs, like credit card limits, etc. Trump is doing, I'm sorry to say it, way too many economic policies that are straight out of the left's playbook. In fact, according to Senator Elizabeth Warren, Trump called her yesterday on the phone. I sure hope he wasn't taking advice on economic policy. I hope he was calling her, Pocahontas or something like that. If Americans want Democrats to be in charge of the economy, they would have voted for the Democrats to be in charge of the economy.
Oh, I love that he called Elizabeth Warren.
It's terrible, horrifying.
The president does something. It's like my friend called me yesterday and said it's almost like an abusive relationship. He'll call Elizabeth Warren. He'll call Mom Donnie, invite him to the office. He will not let big companies buy houses in my neighborhood. And it's like, wow, how good. And then he'll demolish the economy or do something else or invade Venezuela and take out their leadership. So, it's like a give and take with President Trump.
Socialism. This is all socialism.
Look, Trump is making a bid to control the U.S. economy. It's not up to him. The Fed's priority needs to be the health of our economy and not what President Trump wants. And we know that it's not only Democrats, it's not only Republicans. Everybody is literally saying this is a terrible idea. I was trying to see how many people. So it's the congressional Republicans have pushed back, as well as some
not a lot of support for it.
Yeah, there's been a uniform condemnation by every single living Fed chair that has done this position in the past. They uniformly put out a statement and said, this is not great. And then also multiple economists that we've seen have come out and done interviews about this not being great. So I think that the president needs to really be mindful that there are other smarter ways to try to fix the economy. Some that you point out, I know you really don't like his tariffs, but the long-term relief that he thinks he's going to find is not going to be here. Like you can bring up, have the Fed drop these rates, and then you'll see that it might help you for the midterms, but long-term, it could cause inflation in our economy. And everyone who's looking at this is like, even more inflation in 2 years into your term is going to be a disaster. He's going to be leaving J.D. Vance with nothing to go off of. But a bad economy, we know how that fares in an election season. A bad economy means the other party's probably winning.
They're looking pretty screwed. The tariff policy has been such a disaster, and Trump knows the Supreme Court is on the verge of just striking it down entirely. And so he was on True Social yesterday being like, we can't have the Supreme Court strike down the tariffs because then we'd have to give back the money and that would be catastrophic. That's $1 trillion. We can't pay that. It would be horrendous. And I'm like thinking, brother, that's on you. You shouldn't have done this in the first place.
Brother.
Well, don't do unconstitutional things and then you won't face the ramifications for having to get back the money you wrongly expropriated.
And he's proposed things like tariff rebate checks, which economists say don't even balance out. It's like more money you'd be shelling out than what we're receiving
Don't
from
do
tariffs.
the tariff in the first place, and then we'll have
Exactly.
the money.
And then we have Costco at the same time suing the administration because costs rose and they had to push those off to consumers. And they're like,
reach
you pay
into
for
your
it.
wallet, Lindsay. I'm going to take your money, and then I'm going to hand it back to you in the form of a rebate check.
And then sign it by Trump.
You're welcome.
And say yes. Now everybody remembers
You're
you as
welcome,
the
Lindsay.
economically sound president, which is not the right way forward. And I think, this is a real, alarming thing to have the Fed chair speaking out against the president. You usually don't see this type of public battle. And I think Jerome Powell did a really good job of saying, I'm just going to ignore you. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet. This is obviously his tipping point. No, I know. But this how long have they been going back and forth? Yeah. And Jerome Powell's been playing it pretty cool. So I think he's like, this is my limitation. You are really pushing it right now.
I like the idea that if the project goes under budget, we have to investigate the person in government. Okay, let's start doing that. The DOJ itself needs to be investigated then. It's all over. The Pentagon has lost billions of dollars. They fail every audit every single year. They have no idea where all the money went.
And I know this is not publicly
Go after
funded.
some of them.
I know this is not publicly funded, but Trump's ballroom is way over the budget that he first suggested. I think we're close to like 300.
Right. If Congress announced an inquiry into the president over that, I would also say it was stupid. So this is the exact same thing. It's just it's a pretext, and not a Trump hater. I want Trump to succeed. I want the economy to succeed. I liked a lot of the policies he ran on. I liked a lot of the cutting of the waste, fraud, and abuse that Elon said was going to occur at the beginning. But now we're just getting into, he's just doing, I'm sorry, there's no way around it. He's doing leftist public policy with respect to the economy, which is why he's calling people like Elizabeth Warren, she's the grandmother of hateful Marxist progressivism.
Maybe Trump is a
do her
secret
policy.
socialist. He's secretly a socialist this whole time. He tricked everybody.
This is why he brought Europe to the U.S. implement his policies.
I've been seeing people say that. So I saw a YouGov poll at the end of the year that said only 38% of Americans actually approve of how the economy was doing. That was in December.
Yeah.
And so if we look at right now in January, I think
only
that's
socialists approve.
That's not a great situation. So I think majority by far of the country thinks we're not in a good space. And that's been the echoing message. Every time he does something, you see a lot of people on TV point back to where the economy is, but that's what he pointed to the entire time he was running against Biden. So you can't be the same person that talked about fixing it. And we gave you a year, and people are still kind of reeling from inflation that was high under President Biden. Robby, what else is on your radar?
All right, let's get to it. Now, it may be too late to save California from itself. That's the sad truth. And it's the fault of progressive interests, particularly labor unions in that state, that are obsessed with getting a wealth tax on the ballot that would confiscate 5% or more of the wealth of the state's billionaires. I say 5% or more because of the creative way this tax would be structured. It also hits at unrealized gains, which basically means that tech entrepreneurs might have to sell companies in which they hold stock but haven't made any real money off of yet. What other choice would they have if the state attempts to extract this tribute from them? It's sheer robbery. And also, the tax is backdated. It applies to fiscal year 2026, this one. That means if it makes it on the ballot and is voted into law next year, then everybody headquartered in California will suddenly have to pay it. Trust me, the tech folks are well aware, which is why they're already fleeing the state. Peter Thiel, Larry Page left for Florida. David Sachs opened and moved his business to Texas. Sergey Brin looking at Miami. Chamath Palihapitiya is eyeing Texas as well. In other words, the damage is already done. California's wealthiest and most successful entrepreneurs are leaving in droves, which is going to worsen the exact budgetary issues that prompted some Californians to foolishly pursue this policy in the first place. Who am I talking about? Well, labor unions are most responsible for pushing this. They say the state needs more money to pay for health care and for welfare. This just isn't going to go about it the right way. This has the obvious problem of chasing away the very people who would pay the tax. Just look at what happened in Norway, for instance. That was discussed recently on TVPN. Let's watch.
If you start confiscating wealth and taxing unrealized capital gains for people who aren't liquid, so actually we saw this in Norway. So Norway has an unrealized capital gains tax, and Norway's got a lot of extremely smart people, great entrepreneurs, but they all left. And when you talk to entrepreneurs in Norway, they're like, well, I literally can't pay the tax because the company got marked up to whatever, $1 billion, $2 billion, and I own a lot of it, and I can't get that money out. It's a private company, and so I'm stuck. So I have to leave the country. And there are no entrepreneurs. There is basically no tech entrepreneurs in Norway now.
Now, according to the New York Post, one poll found that a narrow majority of Californians supported the tax, but after they heard these and other arguments from both sides, their support for it actually dropped to just 41%. That's good, but the reality is it's already too late. California is committing economic suicide before our very eyes. The best we can hope for is that this tax gets voted down and then serves as a lesson to would-be plunderers elsewhere. So here's the problem, Lindsay. The way this tax is structured on unrealized gain. So let's say you started a company, and you know how these Silicon Valley tech companies go, you get a valuation, $1 billion, $2 billion. That's just on paper. That could shrink to nothing when, you invented, Uber for chicken farmers, and then someone else invents it, like it goes to zero. But when this goes into effect, they'll say, oh, you own this asset that's been evaluated at $1 billion. You got to pay as if that's like literally what it is. So you're going to have to sell your shares in it to cough up the money. So that's just going to kill these people, kill this industry, kill venture capitalism in California, which is why they're anticipating that. They're all leaving. They're going to Florida, to Texas, to Tennessee. Already, they're gone, because as soon as this goes into effect, it's going to say, if you were still in the country, or still in the state, the country of California, you're backdated. They're gone. This is economic suicide. It's going to reduce the tax revenue that they collect in this state out of this misguided notion that blue state can just fix all its problem by taxing the wealthy a little bit higher. You can tax them a little bit more, but taxing unrealized gains is lethal. And some Democrats used to understand that. Ro Khanna understood that. He made a brilliant argument against doing just that. I think he still is against that, but he's come around to supporting a version of the wealth tax.
Well, I think that billionaires, it's going to be tough for some of these billionaires that we're referring to for their kids' probably to spend the money they have. So 5% of this incomes that we're talking about is not that dramatic.
Right.
And they should be charitable, and they should do more to help uplift the community that has helped make them billionaires. I don't think that should be mandated by the government, but yes, they should do more. That said, running these billionaires off, I think California has the most billionaires in one state in the country.
Not for much longer.
And so people are actively leaving. I was looking up the same things as you were looking up. A lot of people are gone and already preemptively saying, I don't care if this passes, I'm out of here. Something similar to this, they tried to pass in California in 2024 and it failed miserably. And so it's like, why do you keep bringing this up? The best way to make money might not be this. And also, Governor Gavin Newsom has a really uphill battle to climb if he thinks, even though he's been publicly saying, this is a terrible idea,
Yeah, he's against
if your
it.
state passes this, and then you run for president, nobody cares, because people are these are the same people that are funding campaigns. These are the same people that are propelling these candidates to rise up and speak on behalf of them.
This is economic
He knows
suicide.
that this is terrible
does not
for
want
him.
to do this.
And I don't think that anybody
it's being forced on him by this union.
Right. And I think that, now it's already where it is. They're voting on it. But again, if this is the second time it gets shot down, maybe the billionaires could start, as they continue to lobby for their companies, what effective policy would you like to see that you think is fair, but also won't completely deteriorate a lot of your income that's not even realized yet?
Sales tax.
So they're going to suggest, up the sales tax.
I'm a supporter of sales tax. If we're going to collect taxes, that's the fair one, because we all pay it. I don't like taxing income. We can have property tax to some degree, because property owners are, a lot of people bought their homes at a time when it was very cheap, and now, they got to pay some. That's okay. I want to lower everybody's tax burden, even if that means we provide fewer social services, particularly for the elderly.
We disagree on that. That's a ridiculous stance. You got to think about
the wider stance.
Yes, you got to think about the wider community, grandma and grandpa. Just like they thought about us when we were little, changed our diapers and whatnot. It's time for you to give back in that way, the other way, pay it forward. You know how it goes, like usually you take care of your kid and then your kid ends up taking care of you. You're not doing your part of that equation. You're the kid that now grew up and needs to take care of your elders.
I don't think the living should be forced to serve the dead.
Robby, what's on your radar today?
Laura Loomer. The Trump-loving social media personality is constantly waging war against various figures on the right who disagree with interventionist foreign policy and endless appetite for starting new wars in the Middle East. She's attacked Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others. And now she's going after Thomas Massie. On X the other day, she posted a video of her reporter confronting Massie in the halls of Congress, and she apparently thought it made Massie look bad. Well, most people seem to disagree with that. Let's watch the encounter.
How's it going?
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Wait, so Congressman, in the last 2 weeks, you repeated AOC's talking points on Venezuela, and Jasmine Crockett has retweeted you. When will you change your party affiliation to Democrat?
I thought you knew. I vote with Republicans 91% of the time. And the 9% I don't, they're taken up for pedophiles, starting another war, or bankrupting our country.
I don't know about that, Congressman. We'll see.
Are we going to impeach Pat Monty for not releasing?
Based. Massey set that guy straight. Yeah, he doesn't vote with Republicans all the time. When Republicans are voting to raise your taxes, spend even more money, or get involved in foreign entanglements, or want to protect Jeffrey Epstein's rich friends, then yeah, Massey doesn't vote with them. It does not make him a Democrat. It makes him someone who thinks for himself. Wouldn't it be nice if more members of Congress were like that? Laura Loomer doesn't want people who think for themselves. She wants a Republican Party that votes in lockstep with Trump. Honestly, that's not even quite right. She wants a Republican Party that votes in lockstep with her vision of Trumpism, a hawkish, interventionist version of Trumpism, one that most people who came aboard the Trump train this time around actually do not want. In fact, if Trump spent a little less time listening to Laura Loomer, a little more time listening to Thomas Massey, the Republican Party would be in better shape. Stop voting for bankruptcy, stop voting to cover for Epstein, and stop getting the U.S. involved overseas. Oh, and maybe, just maybe, could we try to investigate Dr. Fauci? Throw that out there. After all, Trump has directed the DOJ to look at Jerome Powell, John Bolton, James Comey, Letitia James, and other perceived enemies, but when it comes to Fauci, there's no action. That's according to Rand Paul, who has all but handed the DOJ the evidence they need on a silver platter. Here he was telling Joe Rogan all about that.
And I've summarized it again in a criminal referral to Trump's attorney general, and I still haven't gotten action. But there's a couple reasons we should do it. One, he shouldn't get away with lying. He shouldn't get away with destroying records. But two, we should check the pardon. Is an auto pen pardon valid? And is a pardon a retrospective pardon back 10 years that doesn't mention a crime? Can you give people a pardon for everything they did in a 10-year period? I can't imagine, and I think the court might narrow that. But it doesn't happen unless the Trump Justice Department will do something. And I've been sending them referrals, and I can't get them to do anything.
Am I going crazy? Can we get going on the popular parts of the Trump agenda, the one that independent and swing voters who came over to the Trump camp were really excited about? Wouldn't that be a better use of our time than trying to destroy Thomas Massey, who has one of the most America First voting records of anyone in Congress? Just a thought. And I summarized the case against Dr. Fauci. I know you love hearing it.
I'm not going to go into it. I won't join you in
People
that
can watch
Dr.
the video
Fauci
we did yesterday.
party today. But I will say, if you look at the last few years, not even last few years, if you look at the last 12 months, you'll see many Republicans who say, this is what the party does. We talk about different issues. We fall in different parts of an issue, and we debate publicly, and we don't hide away from that. You see at the Turning Points Convention, they allowed people to get up there and bash one another, and that was really what a lot of people pulled from the convention, that there was a little bit of maybe chaos within the party. You see Marjorie Taylor Greene go on The View, and now Scott Jennings is calling her a Democrat, though. And now you see Massey walking through the halls of Congress, and Laura Loomer's reporter, if you want to call him that, was calling him a Democrat. And so I just trying to understand, is the party the one that fights publicly and that's all okay? Or is it immediately when you disagree with things that fall in line with the America First promise that was proposed by the president before he got the job, are you now a Democrat? Because some of the things actually are not that crazy. Like the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey have in common that they cared about Epstein, when really the reason that most people cared about Epstein is because MAGA and the Republican base and a lot of people within the administration now were propelling that they were going to get to the bottom of this. Yeah. So it's still a Republican issue. I mean, especially if you call it a Democratic hoax because people hopped on later that maybe weren't interested even 2 years ago. So I just don't understand why people are getting labeled as they're changing parties completely when they're maybe trying to reel in a party that doesn't seem to have a very specific direction at the time. And I also am super clear about Democrats and their direction, right? But that's a whole other conversation and segment. And I'm the first one to say that Democrats need to figure out what that looks like immediately. However, Republicans have a lot going on and a lot of different people that don't feel satisfied with the state of the union under the Trump administration.
Yeah, internal debate and discussion is a good thing. It really is. My problem with Laura Loomer is that she selectively says that people who are disagreeing with her within the coalition, they're Democrats. They don't belong in the party. And she's just doing that to people like Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's differences with Trump are now much broader than Thomas Massey's, which are concentrated on just his areas of ideological disagreement, areas where I would say Republican leadership is more out of step with the base than Thomas Massey is. But like she would never, Josh Hawley, for instance, although I've been
But you call him a rhino, right?
We're going to talk about him in a moment and his vote on all the war powers situation. But on economics, he votes against the Republican Party constantly. On policy, he votes with Democrats. He votes with Elizabeth Warren on antitrust and banking regulation and all those kinds of things. But Laura Loomer is out doing 10 posts a day about how he's really a Democrat or something. So it's silly. It's selective. It's people who don't, and she wants to invade. She wants to go crazy in the Middle East in terms of intervention, which is not popular among the Republican base. So what if we were out here saying, you're really a Democrat, you should join the Democratic Party? It's so silly.
Well, you know what's so interesting? Laura Loomer should start adding Donald Trump on social media because one, it was reported in the New York Post that he speaks to Mamdani, and Mamdani has his direct number and talks to him often, and they have a pretty chummy relationship. But Eric Adams didn't even have...
Well, they have a very similar economic policy.
Eric Adams didn't even have Trump's number. He had to go through the liaison to get in touch with Trump. So they might be friends now. It's good to say that. He also called Elizabeth Warren. We reported that yesterday, and you were very upset. And so if you are calling Josh Hawley a rhino, like some people do, or a lot of people do, well, then Trump himself is a rhino. He's literally cozying up to people whose policies the entire MAGA base is supposed to despise endlessly. But he's calling Elizabeth Warren. He's capping credit cards. He's doing all these things that
I would lose her phone
Elizabeth
real
Warren
quick.
Style policies.
So
shouldn't Laura Loomer direct her anger at the head in charge?
Yeah, but you can't do that and get anywhere. If you lash out at Trump, you're done. You're donezo.
Well, so much for freedom of speech.